So, without further ado, our third speaker will be Tiffany Burke. Tiffany Burke is a licensed master social worker with a focus on adolescents and families. She has a background in healthcare and has been a medical social worker for 4 years. She also works as a public health coordinator with the Shelby County Health Department, serving as a liaison to the harm reduction and data integration work group. She earned her master's from the University of Memphis. Please welcome Tiffany Burke.
Hello, can everybody hear me? I'm gonna take that as a yes. All right, so today we're going to talk about stigma and how it hurts. One of the definitions that we found on stigma, there we go, states that it's a set of negative beliefs that a group or society holds about a topic or a group of people. When a person experiences stigma, they're seen as less than because of their real or perceived health status. Stigma is rarely based on facts, but rather on assumptions, preconceptions, and generalizations. Therefore, its negative impact can be prevented or lessened through education. Some of the things that can result from stigmatizing are prejudice, avoidance, rejection, discrimination against people who have socially undesirable traits or engage in culturally marginalized behaviors such as drug use. Family and friends and the general public can carry negative feelings about drug use or behavior. They may even use insulting terms such as junkie, alcoholic, crackhead. These thoughts and feelings and labels can create and perpetuate stigma. So right off the bat, just looking at the definition of stigma, we can see how it can hurt an individual and understand the need to change. So let's go. Okay. Some of the harmful effects of stigma, as you can see on the screen, are feeling of shame, hopelessness, isolation, reluctance to ask for help or to get treatment, lack of understanding by family or friends, reluctancy to go to harm reduction services, self-doubt, self-belief. So there are plenty of harmful effects that come with stigma. And down at the bottom, you see that it says, remember that a person is not their illness. So we do not define them by their illness. And the key thing that you're going to hear me say today is that person first. And we have to remember that. We have to remember just because a person has a substance use disorder or a mental illness, they are still people like the rest of us. They are people, and we have to remember that. And I think that's one of the key things that will help people to reduce the stigma and change how they look at or talk to people who have substance use disorders. So stigma is a public health issue, i.e. why the health department is taking stigma on, especially when it comes to substance use disorder. The quote says that stigma is a public health issue. It contributes to high rates of death, incarceration, mental health concerns among dependent populations. So this defines why stigma is very important to everyone, especially those in any type of healthcare field, be it mental health, medical health. We have to remember that put that person first. When our job is to serve people with health conditions, and we fail to address our biases and project stigma on that population, then that we've committed to serve, then we're not doing our professional justice and we're not doing that personal justice. And so we have to remember that. We have to remember to address our biases and in order to reduce stigma. And if anybody is, I know he said some students are here going to be a social worker, doctor, nurses in the healthcare field. One oath that you're going to take, if you're not already one, you've taken it, is to do no harm. And in social work, I know we have that motto, if you can't help, don't hurt. And so one of the things that stigma does, it hurts. It's not helping the person at all, it hurts. The concept of stigma describes the powerful negative perceptions commonly associated with substance abuse and addiction. Stigma has the potential to negatively affect a person's self-esteem, damage relationships with loved ones, and prevent those who are suffering from addiction from accessing treatment. And again, that hurts. Our goal as mental health workers, as social workers, as nurses, any profession along that line is to help. And so if we're projecting stigma on the people we're committed to serve, then we're not helping at all. We're certainly hurting them. In a study by Kelly et al., it was stated that it was found that using the term substance abuser was perceived as engaging in willful misconduct, a greater social threat, and more deserving of punishment when compared to the term of having a substance use disorder. So in other words, using the term abuser gave people the perception that the person is willingly engaging in harmful acts. But science has shown us that that's not the case. Addiction is a brain game. I know Jack threw out Josh Well. He does the Narcan training, but he also does a great PowerPoint on how addiction affects the brain. And that's something I think that people need to understand, that it's more than just a willpower thing. It's not a willpower thing. It's not a moral failure at all. It's none of that. It's a brain thing. Once, no matter how that person started, addiction takes over and it becomes a brain thing. And I think that's one of the important things that we have to understand when addressing stigma and substance use disorder. So why is all that important? We use terms like abuser, and it may elicit a more punitive, unspoken cognitive bias, whereas the term substance use disorder elicits a more therapeutic attitude. And we know with a therapeutic attitude, you see that, oh, there's treatment for it. And there is treatment for substance use disorder. So why not use substance use disorder? And we all have a cognitive biases to different things due to our upbringing and environment. And that's just a given. That's just us as humans. So it's important to acknowledge your biases and address them so that you can deal with how you are handling stigma. And the term abuser also gives the perception that it's the person's fault. They choose to abuse illicit drugs. And like we just talked about, you know, it's a science thing. It's a brain thing. It's not that. It's not what the what we've come to say and come to make it as, oh, it's their fault or they're doing that. No, the science has told us it's more than just that. And substance use disorder, the term substance use disorder makes it perceived as a treatable condition. The term disorder may convey the notion that there is some kind of medical malfunction there, or an increasing the likelihood or invoking more therapeutic attitude. And that's what we want to do. We want to invoke the therapeutic attitude. We want people to understand that yes, there is treatment for it. It is a therapeutic treatment for it. There is help for it. We want people to feel that way and not just feel like, oh, you just failed at life. No, we don't want people. We don't want to do that. So the use of the term substance use disorder may be more preferable, as it may be less stigmatizing. And given the common use of the term abuser among clinicians, scientists, policymakers, even the general public, this term has become part of the reason why may have become a part of the reason why many individuals do not seek treatment or do not stay in recovery. And so we got to understand that we're causing more hurt to them. So here we have a few quotes from a study that was done with people who have substance use disorder. And some of the things that they said were, just because I am or was an addict doesn't make me a bad person deep down inside. We're wonderful, loving people. It's not a matter of willpower or a lack of moral compass. Addiction is not the entirety of me. I am me. I am not just my addiction. There's a lot of love, other stuff to love. And I wish people saw the time the addicts spent alone, thinking about everything they've done, every time they've lied and stole. When I read these statements, what it tells me or what it reminds me, again, these are people with feelings and emotions. They're people, as simple as that. And becoming dependent on drugs can happen to anybody. And if you follow the health department and if you follow our opioids, the coalition in any capacity, you have heard us say our motto is addiction can happen to anyone. And that is just what it is. It can happen to anyone. It can be your best friend, your boss, your neighbor, your doctor, literally anyone. And the point is to remember that they are people. They are people with substance use disorder. We cannot define them as their disorder. And that's something that we have to stop doing. And it's important to keep in mind that we can all do a better job of decreasing the stigma around drug use. And one of the things that we can do is remember that they are people. I'm going to get to some more a little bit later on things that we can do. But the first thing we have to remember, once we all acknowledge and remember, they are people. They have feelings and emotions. They're somebody's child, somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's sister. They are people. I think that's the key to this. Okay, the next big one is an impact on harm reduction and treatment. Because we've talked a lot about harm reduction. Jack has mentioned harm reduction. Austin mentioned harm reduction. Harm reduction activities across the country include needle exchange sites, medication-assisted treatment, and safe drug consumption rooms. Here in Shelby County, We do have needle exchange sites, like Jack mentioned, the SSPs that MAPC does, A Better Way does one on Friday nights. So we have those throughout Shelby County, and we also have agencies that offer medication assisted treatment. So we have those here in Shelby County, and when I get through with this, I'll give more information about those that Jack gave, and plus the other ones that I just mentioned. But anyway, these interventions are usually not supported by the general public and believed by some to facilitate and encourage drug use, despite evidence demonstrating that they actually decrease drug use. As Austin stated, many people who come to harm reduction sites, they do eventually go into treatment. And it's because they do build relationships. If you ever get a chance to go out to any of the SSPs, go out there and see what happens. And the people who run these sites, they're talking to these clients, and they're building relationships, and they just share with them. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think that you really should, if you have any kind of stigma against somebody with substance use disorder, you should definitely go out to one of these SSP sites and see what really happens, and it would totally change you. And another thing I remind people about this needle exchange sites is it helps the community. Like someone mentioned about the needles being found in their yard or on the street. Well, if we have more SSP sites, more people turning those needles, less needles are on the ground. So harm reduction, needle exchange, they help the community, they help everybody. So we really need to change the stigma that surrounds them. Then when you look at the treatment side of it, there was a survey conducted by Howard and Chung that noted that emergency room nurses generally regard alcohol and drug misusers as troublesome patients and dislike caring for them. So if a patient, or if I'm coming in seeking help and I do have a substance use disorder, and I get that treatment, not to say they don't treat my wound, but they give me a negative attitude and treat me like I'm just abuser, or just I'm not going to want to continue to come to that service. I'm not going to want to continue to go to the emergency room or go to the clinic, because I know that's how I'm going to be treated. And though the nurse or the doctor may have actually treated what I came in for, but the attitude they had towards me makes me feel like I didn't belong there. And that goes back to you hurting the patient. You're hurting that person instead of helping them. Even though you might have treated the wound, that attitude may have convinced them not to return back to an emergency room service, which we know a wound can set up, can affect, and can cause even more harm. So we have to change the mentality of that, and especially in healthcare settings. Another study that was done in the UK said pretty much the same thing, that they were prejudging patients negatively, and it caused differences and disparities in delivery of care. And I pray that doesn't happen, that you don't change your delivery of care based off a person's condition. But it does happen, and that's something we have to stop, because again, it goes back to you're hurting that patient instead of helping them. And so that's very important reason why we need to stop the stigma. Run from a better way. His words, I'm gonna change his quote a little bit. A dead person can't recover. So harm reduction, that's one way of looking at it. If we can keep with the harm reduction services, getting the HIV testing, getting the Hep C testing, the sterile needles to keep infections from passing around, it gives them another opportunity at life. It gives them another opportunity, giving them the Narcan. It gives them another opportunity, to get to the point where they are ready for recovery. So if they're not always getting the proper treatment in any kind of medical setting, and it decreases their chances of survival. And like I said, we want them to survive. Due to widespread stigma about those who use drugs and suffer from addiction, it hinders or buries those who need the help. And like I said, if you really want to see SSPs in live action, I really urge you to go to one of the SSPs. Like he said, MAPC does theirs Wednesday from 1 to 3 at Claybrook, 6:30 to 8:30 on Summer. I know he put it in the chat. Mondays in Whitehaven from 1 to 3, and A Better Way does theirs Friday nights at 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Sycamore View and Shelby Oaks. And I really think that would help you get a better understanding of the SSPs and the harm reduction services that are offered throughout Shelby County. Okay, the effects of social and mental impact from stigma. People with substance use disorder can often feel pushed away from society and may lose touch with their community and family. So in the article that this quote came from, it talks about how stigma can be twofold. So you do have the public stigma. You have, and I say we just in general, because I watch my words, but you have the public who we are, saying these negative words and projecting these negative thoughts and negative attitudes on people who have substance use disorder or mental illnesses. But the studies show that a lot of times people also have an internal stigma, and they are judging themselves and being and having those thoughts within. So if you're giving it to them and they're getting it, then where are they getting the positive message from that they may need to help them? So we have to really be careful with the words that we say, because we never know what a person is dealing with internally. Um, so when we think about people with mental illness or substance use disorder dealing with stigma, they're possibly receiving on both ends. They may have family members of loved ones who are calling them crackhead and junkie and saying all those words, and then their internal them is they're already beating themselves up inside because either they may want to stop and they can't. And it's so much, and that stigma that you're adding on top of it is not helping them at all. And all that just kind of goes back to all the previous hurts that I mentioned that stigma can cause. And so it just adds up and it's not helpful. All right, so the positive side, how can we fight back against stigma? Things that we could do as a general public, as healthcare workers, as social workers, as nurses, as whatever you are. These are some things that you can do to help fight back. I won't list all of them because there are quite a lot, but you can go to the American Addiction Center website and you can find this list, and they also explain, different ways that you can do things. But in order to encourage people to reach out for help and to get on the path of recovery, it's important to reduce stigma. And we all understand that people, they're going to change or get help when they want to. That's understandable. That's pretty known that, when people are ready for change, that's when they'll change. But there are things that we could do to help. And educational programs and modeling of non-stigmatizing behavior can help people provide non-judgmental, empathetic support. And that's a way that you can support without even doing anything. You can just support by changing the way you talk about a person, or change the way you interact with the person. And that's a form of support. So some of the ones, I won't read all of them, like I said, but some of the ones that kind of stuck out for me were seeing the person for who they are and not for what drug they use. That's very important. It's going back to seeing people for people. And that's something that everyone can do. When we see a person who may have cancer or diabetes or Alzheimer or any other disorder, we see that person. And it's time for us to look at people who have substance use disorder in the same way. That person, that's just a person. They are not the substance they use. They are the person. Another one, treating people with drug dependency with dignity and respect. I mean, that's the easiest one. Like, how hard is it to treat somebody with dignity and respect, right? I mean, you can respect the person and just, nod and keep on going. You don't have to say anything about that person. You don't have to say anything to it. It's very simple. You can treat a person with dignity and respect. I think that's something we all can do. Replacing negative attitudes with evidence-based facts, knowing how addiction takes over the brain. Again, I'm going to throw Josh back out there. If you need any kind of education on how it works, reach out to them. They have experts who can talk to you, about how addiction affects the brain. Or, do your own research. There are so many articles out there that talks about how addiction affects the brain. And do your research and evidence-based facts. Don't go by preconceived notions just because it's been said for 100 years. Oh, they're just this, they're just that. No, there's science behind it now, and it tells you, how this works. Speak up because of their drug use. If you're working in a healthcare environment and you see one of your coworkers, saying something negative, it's very simple and very easy to say, if they're saying, oh, he's just a crackhead in here for his blah, blah, blah. You can simply say, no, he's a patient who's here to be serviced. It's that simple. If you see something, say something. And you don't have to have an altercation or anything. You can just simply say, well, yes, the patient is here for their service. Or yes, the person with substance use disorder is here for their service. It's just as simple as that. But if you see something, say something. That's the only way we're going to stop this thing, is if we all take an oath to step up and speak up. Because, people are just going to be people. But we all have the ability to change. And if you would be that one in your workplace or in your friend group or in your family to start making the change, you will be amazed of the effects that it have on others in your family. So I'm just going to suggest that you try those. So those are some things that we can do as people. There's a list of things that you can do. All right, language matters. So this is very important. So if you're gonna be the one to speak up and step up and say something, the National Institute on Drug Abuse website, drugabuse.gov, has a list of words that you can use to replace the words that you may use currently. So on the first list, there's a whole long list. So these are the ones that pertain to substance use. So I stop here. But substance addict or user or substance or drug user or junkie or cracker, any of those words, you can say person with the substance use disorder or person with the opioid use disorder, because those are both, that's the official name of those disorders. If you know if they have an opioid addiction. Or simply say patient or client. If you're in a healthcare setting, it costs you nothing to just say patient or client. You don't have to label at all. You don't even have to mention it unless it's relating to their medical treatment. You don't have to mention the disorder. The patient is here. The client is here. You don't have to say the junkie, the crack. That's an unnecessary word, especially if you're in a healthcare setting. Patient is sufficient enough. But changing that language puts the person first language. And again, it goes back to what I said originally. They're people. And we have to remember that they are people. So this is a person first language. Another one, instead of alcoholic or drunk, you can, person with alcohol use disorder, person who misuses alcohol. And that change shows that the person has a problem rather than is a problem. And then you get the last one here, former addict or reformed addict. And we know that the preferred term is a person in recovery or long-term recovery, a person who previously used drugs. Their terms avoid eliciting negative association, punitive attitudes, and individual blame, because going back to abuser and addict and all of those old terms that we use and what has become associated with those terms. So just a person in recovery. It's as simple as that. I mean, the language change is so simple, it can easily be done. All right, here at the health department, we also have the Change the Narrative Pledge. If anybody knows Ms. Alation is there with the health department, this is her thing. And whenever we go to outreach events and we go anywhere, we're trying to encourage the public to change their narrative, change the stigma, stop using negative terms like crackhead and junkie and all that stuff, and use substance use disorder or a patient or a client. Change the narrative is what we're encouraging people to do. And so we ask people to take this pledge all the time. If you would like for us to come out to your workplace, or you have a group or organization you'd like us to come speak at, we can bring the pledge, we can explain some how stigma hurts, and encourage them to change the wording. We can also give them words they can use instead, like the language matters slide. We can give them the language they can use instead of the terms they've always associated with persons with substance use disorder. So we'll be glad to come out there and do that. And I think I have enough time to show the quick little video. So these are some of the people from the health department who did the Change the Narrative. I hope you guys can hear it. Yeah, again, so these pledges were signed by the people at the Shelby County Health Department. That's one of the videos. It's a couple of more, but my screen is acting kind of crazy right now. Oh, I don't know what just happened there. But yeah, so those are some of the things that we can do to change the narrative, change the way we talk to people or talk about people who have any kind of substance use disorder. And here we go. Okay. And here's my contact information if anybody would like for us to come out and do the stigma presentation for your organization. Like I said, we also can do our opioid presentation for your organization if you would like for us to do that. Anyone in the opioid program can come out there and give the presentation. But yeah, this is all I got, and got some questions.
Hi, Tiffany. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Olivia.
How are you?
Fine.
Good. Well, we really appreciate you, coming out and giving this presentation to us. It had some really, really great information, and we're really thankful that you dedicated your time today to us. We're super thankful for you and for doing that. We just had a couple questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, in what ways do you think that stigma is, what stigma do you think is most prevalent in our community? Like, what do you see most often?
Most of the time, if we going into the community, not in healthcare setting, you hear, and this is especially prevalent amongst our young people. Oh, junkie, crackhead, those name calling, that labeling, right? It's like it's become such a I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but we've done it for so long, and our children are doing it, and they do it as a joke, and they're saying, "Oh, that he's a crackhead. Oh, he's a junkie," and I don't, children are children, so I don't think they realizing how those words are hurting. But as adults, we have the capabilities of saying, no, we're not going to say that. But the problem is we're saying it too. So that's one of the things I see, especially in the community, is just using terms like that, just constantly using those labeling terms. And I think that's something we really need to work on stopping.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for answering that. Somebody else wants to know, what are some ways that you can encourage a loved one to continue to receive treatment and services after they've been discouraged by these typical stigmas that occur so often?
And so one of the things you can do is, and like I said, it starts with you. You make sure you're using the positive language, and you make sure you're encouraging the other family members to use the positive language. It's as simple as pulling them to the side and say, hey, they're struggling with this. Let's not use those terms. Let's support them. Like I said, using positive language can just be a source of support without even doing anything. You just changing your language. So encouraging your family and friends to also change their language and be more of a support. I know it's hard because a lot of people don't want to change. A lot of people haven't made up in their mind, oh, they're just doing this, that. But we have to try. Like I said, you have to be the one. And it's just all that you can do is be the one, but continue to support them. Reach out, like I said, to MAPC and get the resources that you can find to help continue to support. And I know a lot of people, jobs have the EAP program. And so if you're dealing with someone in your home who has a substance use disorder and you don't know what else to do to help them, go to your EAP services and talk to one of the clinicians and see what they can do to help you to help this person. And they also have family support programs where you can go into a group support. And so that way you can learn what you can continue to do to help that person.
That's great. Thank you. We have one last question for you. In what ways does stigma weaponize addiction?
So it's that negative notion again, right? So it's that constant, the person who has the addiction already know that they've done some wrong things. They know that they're struggling with this. And for us to continue to harp on, it's like we're adding salt to the wound. They're already that deep and we're constantly adding to it. So why would I want to seek help if everyone already thinks so negatively of me? I'm thinking bad about myself, then you add this on. So why would I want to, seek help? So that's one of the reasons why it is a weapon, and it's a very harmful weapon. It's just like, it's like a bullet, you know what I'm saying? So we have to truly watch what we're saying, because words hurt. People don't think words hurt, but words do hurt. And they truly, truly are a powerful weapon. And so that's one of the reasons why we're trying to encourage people to just change the attitude. And like I said, if you go to one of the SSPs, any of the SSPs and you see how MAPC and the Better Way interact and all the volunteers interact with the people that come out there, you really, it's a true eye opener. Encourage anyone to do it, to just go.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. You are amazing. And we're so glad that you took the time to come speak with us today. And yeah, we're just super thankful that you dedicated your time to us today.
Oh, thank you. Anytime.
Thank you. I'm going to send it back over to Scarlett now.